So with that, thank you everyone for joining us here this morning from everywhere. Thank you for joining us. We're here for the AI Search Reality Check, playing the hand that you're dealt. I am very excited to have this panelist joining us today to hear their contributions to everything that's changing in AI search and SEO. Before we get started, I want to share with you, there will be a replay at the end. You'll receive it by email just in a couple days, so don't worry if you have to hop off or anything like this. But please feel free to drop your questions in the dedicated tab at the bottom of your screen. We will have a Q&A at the end, so we'll be going over all the questions with a dedicated maybe 10 minutes to try to address them. So feel free to drop them in there and then catch the replay if you're not able to stay at the end. To get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Janaina. I'm a technical SEO at Oncrawl, and I have a wonderful group of panelists joining me today. I'll go ahead and pass it to Rejoice to go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go around.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Rejoice. I'm based in Kent, but work in London. I'm a senior content business specialist for Wise, as well as a co-founder of Be Digital. That is a community for Black marketers. So yeah, it's really nice to be here, and I can't wait to sort of dive into this topic.
Nice. Thank you, Rejoice. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep. So I'm Sarah. I've been doing SEO since 2014. I work both agency side and client side. You may have probably seen me on LinkedIn. I live there. Right now I work at CBC, and I'm super happy to be here.
Nice. Thank you.
I'm Andreas. I'm a regular reader of Sarah's newsletters, the SEO newsletter. I'm also the founder of Artios, and soon to be, which I recommend reading, by the way, and soon to be a published author of generative engine optimization books later out December this year.
Nice, thank you.
And I'm Patryk. I've been doing SEO for 10 years now, I think. Yeah, and I'm a co-founder of Organic Hackers, where we focus on technical SEO mostly for larger websites. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your introductions. Let's jump over to the agenda. So just to cover what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to set the context in terms of the conversation, kind of what we're seeing, the challenges, which I think we're all kind of aligned on what challenges that we're facing and what kind of cards that we have to play with. So if we talk about this in terms of like a poker game, what do we have available to us and how can we kind of leverage it with all the changes that we're facing? And those three main topics are revenue alignment, technical debt, what does it mean? If it goes unaddressed right now, or even brand presence. We'll have the Q&A at the end, and then we'll do a key takeaways from each one of our panelists here who will share kind of a snippet at the end. To jump right into it, let's set the context on the conversation. We're very much in a discovery phase, and it's kind of been maybe uncomfortable, I think, and maybe fun as well. I think we can all agree when it comes to AI search and visibility, because so much is changing so fast. And like any good game, you can't really see all the cards, right? We don't have visibility on everything that's happening. And what we're facing is traffic is down, attribution is unclear, and we have a lot of new and unproven tools to be working with. So it's interesting. We're experimenting. Sometimes it's not coming out the way that we would expect it, and sometimes it is. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what does that mean with the cards that we do have available to us. So I mentioned earlier revenue alignment. What does it mean when the metrics that we were working with aren't really performing the same way? Let's talk about, let's say, traffic, clicks. It's not really selling or telling the same story when it comes to our SEO strategy. And how can revenue alignment play here when we're having a conversation of what does it mean to the bottom line and how can we introduce this? So one of the first questions that I have are, and this one's for you, Patryk, are you seeing cases where traffic is down, but revenue or qualified leads are stable or even up? And what does that pattern usually tell you?
Yes. I see such cases where the traffic is down, especially when you have an informational heavy website, where you have a lot of articles, a lot of content heavy, a site that is relying a lot of its traffic on content itself rather than the business part, or if you have an e-commerce that is that is mostly gathering traffic from blog than e-commerce part. So in those cases, you can see significant traffic drops because of AI, because a lot of responses are directly in like AI reviews or somewhere else. But at the end of the day, a lot of those queries, a lot of this traffic usually isn't converting, and we saw cases where, well, yeah, of course, the traffic dropped, but then the revenue stayed the same. We see cases where this is also outside of the AI search a bit, but we even just recently, like last month, we had a case where we like removed 90% of the site because it was like low quality pages, and we see I think like 30% drop in traffic, but the revenue went up by like 50% from SEO channel because we have so much more positive user data, and we just recently started seeing like positive upward in traffic again. So we are recovering what we lost, but now we are ranking for more valuable keywords. And at the end of the day, this is what you should be focusing on. So the business side, actually, not only the traffic, which for years and years like became, I think, a vanity metric, because traffic is not what actually like generates revenue. Revenue is generating revenue. So it's actually what we should be focusing on. And I think now it's especially important when you have like way less traffic coming to websites from SEO.
Nice. So the traffic, let's say, that left in this scenario for this particular client, it wasn't really traffic that mattered in the sense.
Yes,
and some
yeah,
of that pruning.
like in their case, they had like a lot of those pages were indexable, and they were like out of stock products. They were like out of stock for like 6 years, and I think they were generating like super short sessions, huge bounce rates, but the clicks were still in the Search Console, so you can still see the clicks, but they had no business impact. I think they generated like 0.3% of the revenue, so very, very little from the like revenue wise compared to the scale of the issue. So we had like over, I think, 92% of the pages we removed from the website. So quite a lot, and was like, I think, over 100K pages. So quite a bit, and yeah, and we are seeing the like a positive results from those changes.
Nice. Okay, this is really interesting. Sarah, I think maybe you had a point that you wanted to share as well.
Yeah, I just want to say that we sometimes forget that sometimes traffic volume matters for publishers, where they rely on more page views, right? So that's a concern. And when you see that your traffic is down, and your bottom line metric, which can be page views because you're basically relying on ads, right? Then you'll need to pivot. Obviously, this means that your informational queries have been impacted, assuming that's AI overviews. There may be other reasons, but AI overviews obviously is the biggest thing. Then we also forget that Google has different surfaces, and the content that works on Google Discover is very different than what works in search, right? So then you'll need to write your content in a way that it performs well in Discover. That's the type of content that would perform well in social, right? For example, the title in Google Discover can be, I don't know, some celebrity and a quote, for example. And the content is a bit more sensational. It's a bit different in that area. So you may need to actually pivot if views are important for you, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Actually, that leads really nicely into the next question. I'll jump right into it. So the next one is, how are you reframing the measurement conversation with executives or clients who are still anchored to session and click metrics? So like you mentioned, Patryk, like a vanity metric, but it did make it, I don't want to say easy, but it helped to tell a story, right, in terms of the strategy that was put in place. So how are you reframing that? If I could pass this to Rejoice, if you could kind of share with us how you handle that.
I think that the biggest challenge isn't necessarily like the data. I think it's changing years of conditioning, and I think that's what a lot of like SEO people are sort of stuck in. We've been conditioned to sort of do things certain ways. So for the longest time, SEO success was measured through like rankings, clicks, and sessions, and we've kind of trained stakeholders to look at those metrics because they were visible and they were easier to understand. They generally moved in the same direction as business performance. So the problem is that we're now operating in an environment where visibility and engagement are becoming increasingly disconnected. So when we're speaking to executives or clients, I think we should start by telling them that traffic doesn't. I think we start telling them traffic doesn't matter anymore, because that's not true. So we can't say traffic doesn't matter. Traffic still matters, but I think we should try to explain is that traffic is no longer the complete story of SEO or of performance. So we're seeing situations where impressions remain relatively stable, brand demands are remaining stable as well, conversions also remain stable, but clicks are declining because users aren't getting answers directly within search experiences. And if we only focus on like clicks, or we focus on clicks and impressions, we conclude what we're doing is we're concluding performance is getting worse. But if we look at the wider picture, we might find that the business impact hasn't changed nearly as much. So the conversation we should be having now is less about how much traffic did we lose and more about what behavior changed, and did it actually affect business outcome. So one thing that has sort of been working within the industry is segmenting performance by intent. So not all traffic has the same value. So if we're losing low intent informational traffic but we're maintaining high intent commercial traffic, that's a very different scenario than losing people who are actively searching products or actively searching for services. What I'm also sort of seeing is that is helpful to shift the discussion towards visibility and influence. So are we still showing up for questions that matter? Are we being cited in AI generated responses? Are people discovering the brand at key moments within that customer journey? So these questions tend to sort of resonate more because they're much closely to how people are making decisions today. And what was not working is trying to force new search behaviors into old reporting frameworks. So if we keep using clicks as the primary success metric, we're going to spend the next few years explaining decline after decline, even when the business is performing perfectly well. So organizations should adapt best are the ones broadening what their measurement framework looks like. They're looking at visibility, brand demand, engagement and quality, conversion performance, and looking at that alongside traditional SEO metrics. So I think our role as SEO is becoming less about reporting traffic and more about explaining influence. So we need to show how search contributes to awareness, consideration, conversion across a much more fragmented landscape. And that's a harder conversation, but I think it's also a much more valuable one to sort of have with executives.
Yeah, absolutely. That ties really good into the next question too, but I think Andreas, you may have had a point that you wanted to share for this one.
Well, look, everybody loves a story. So the story I tell to help reframe this is that the internet has simply changed. 25 years ago when I started SEO, the internet looked like a sprawl of highways, and you could build your shops and build hideaways to it, right? And it was like very kind of not it was many sort of short buildings full of shops, and as the web has evolved, it's become more closed. So now the web is more like, it's more like the shopping mall I visited when I was on holiday last year in Oman, and in there, all the shops have paid to be inside the shopping mall, and the only way you organically get your brand seen, if you're not prepared to pay for that shop space or that retail unit in that shopping mall, call that advertising by way of analogy, is to have your brand name displayed on billboards and advertising boards, right? Except so this is how I see the web now. It's like, why are we doing SEO stroke GEO? Why are we doing this? The reason why we're doing this is because we're in a closed internet where search engines and AI search platforms, they don't want you to leave their own websites or their platforms. They want you to stay there. Just like the shopping mall is self-contained, the internet has become more closed and contained. So the reason for doing this is now impressions and visibility, because if you're not visible, even if you're not visible in these platforms, even though you might not get as much traffic as you used to, then tomorrow you're going to be nowhere, because with agentic search, which is highly reliant on the shortlist that appears, that is generated by today's AI search platforms. If you're not in there, you're nowhere.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So bouncing off what the both of you had just said in terms of, okay, so we're kind of reframing, we are the AI search, or AI search, excuse me, is evolving in terms of optimization and how we report and maybe different measurements. But if we tie this into conversations with executives or stakeholders, here's a question for when a client or stakeholder comes to you panicked about, let's say, this traffic drop, there's a really emotional reaction to that. What's the first cut of data that you actually look at? Andreas, if I can stay with you, if you don't mind sharing what you do, or what cut of data are you looking at?
Well, I take the classical approach, which is, first of all, when you're looking at any kind of data metric, you look at commonly which of your pages have dropped, do a before and after, and you benchmark what the normal performance was at page level versus what it is now or after the event, and then you're able to work out which pages were affected, and therefore you can go from there. And if you really want to get sophisticated, you start pulling in other data sources that can possibly explain which features of those pages, and it's important to analyze the winners or the non-affected with the affected. So you could do some kind of modeling or split A/B retrospective testing to see, what was the probability that this particular feature of your content or your technical or maybe offsite actually had a statistically significant effect, or could possibly explain the difference in traffic before and after.
Nice. Thank you so much. Rejoice, I think you just raised your hand. Did you want to add?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I agree with Dre. And I think when we're sort of, it's interesting when you're dealing with a client and they sort of come in at you sort of panicking. I think we have to remember that when we are trying to sort of give an answer, I don't think we need to jump straight into rankings or AI visibility. I think the first thing I would, look at is what kind of traffic has actually disappeared. So a lot of times when traffic drops on its own, it doesn't tell us much in terms of that. So I think before any investigation starts, you should want to understand whether you're talking about branded traffic, or we're talking about non-branded traffic or informational traffic, or traffic that's historically driven conversions. So I think the biggest things I found sort of working with clients in the past has been treating all traffic as though all traffic are equal. So if you're losing 10,000 visits to a top of funnel article, that's a very different story from losing 500 visits to a high intent page that's consistently generating leads or revenue. So I think the first cut should be usually intent. So I would want to know, where is that decline happening? Is it concentrated on informational content? Is it affecting commercial pages? Is it site-wide? Is it a trend? And the second thing you want to look at is benchmarking that against business impact. So with our conversions down as well, our leads down as well, has revenue been impacted? So because sometimes a traffic drop can look very dramatic, and we see a lot of times, but when you look at the outcomes, it hasn't really changed a lot. So after that, look at the search visibility. Are impressions holding steady? Has the rankings moved in any sort of way? And I think taking this approach is because traffic is a symptom, not necessarily the diagnosis. So if someone comes to me panicked about traffic drop, I don't want to know that the traffic is down. I want to know, why is it down? Who stopped it coming, or whether people are valuable to the business in the first place. Is that a valuable page? Because quite often, by the time I've answered those questions, the conversation becomes a lot less emotional and a lot more strategic. And I think we want to stay in that strategic claim with clients a lot of the time.
Nice. So yeah, so you're saying to really put it into perspective when you're kind of diving in and kind of investigating. I know, Patryk, you just raised your hand, then maybe Sarah after. We go with Patryk and then Sarah right after.
Yes, I pretty much wanted to just say the same thing as Rejoice mentioned, the second part of her answer. But yeah, but connecting the drop to the business, or better understanding uh, if the chart that we are seeing, this drop that we see on the chart, actually reflect in the business. I think this is something that needs to be mentioned pretty much on every single conversation with the client or with the stakeholders, because the charts, like, they cause panic. The traffic, they look scary, they look menacing, but the first question we need to ask is like, but is your business suffering? Did that impact like your bottom line? Does something happened actually? And then we can try to calm them down, because at the end of the day we want to have a not like emotionally charged conversation about marketing. We just want to fix things and help the business grow, not only the traffic grow.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think they all said awesome stuff. Basically, you want to narrow down the issue. Is it site-wide? Is it a specific part of the website? Is it specific type of content, actually? All of this is awesome. I also sometimes try to compare with what's happening in other channels, because if it's a seasonality issue, for example, or the piece of content itself is not great, it may also not be performing in other places, right? You may want to compare even your clicks with PPC. If PPC also is struggling, it can be some seasonality issue or demand issue, right? So yeah, I just wanted to raise that.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for contributing to this one. If it's okay, I'm gonna jump to the next question just so that we can keep it going. Oops, excuse me. The last one is, what tracking issues are we facing with AI in general and attribution? Sarah, if I could pass this one to you.
Yeah, well, it sucks. Just to start off, this sucks, and you get to meet with stakeholders and you don't have the data to explain things to them, and it's just a messy situation. People want to know, everyone wants to know how many clicks we're getting from Google's AI experiences, because there are some ways you can figure out how many referrals you're getting from ChatGPT or whatever, but it's AI overviews and AI mode that are the problem, and we're not getting this data. And something, just since we're here, I think we should keep pushing for them and applying some pressure for them to show us this data. Bing is showing us citations, and then Google showing us impressions, which no one asked for this, but I mean, it's better than nothing. Yeah, maybe. We want to know, obviously, if our content is performing in AI mode and AI overviews, and how worthy it is for us to invest in content that goes to traditional search, right? That's the main reason people are having this conversation. Should they invest in SEO? Should they invest in trying to rank in the 10 blue links? If not, maybe we should go for discover. Maybe we should go for video content in search as well, right? But maybe we should pivot what type of content we're creating. So it's a problem. And for publishers, there's an extra layer where we want to know also, is our content performing in top stories? We don't also have this data. So yeah, that's in summary.
Nice. Thanks, Sarah. Rejoice, I think you also want to add.
Yeah, I completely agree with Sarah. I think it just boils down to that. I think the biggest challenge right now is that, user behavior is changing much faster than our measurement frameworks, because just historically, like, search has relatively been straightforward, and I think that's what's kind of messing people up now, is that someone searched, clicked a result, you land on the website, and we could track most of that journey very, very easily. With AI, I think it's because we're increasingly seeing interactions happen before a click ever occurs. So a user might get an answer from an AI overview, ChatGPT, Perplexity, or any other platform. They build awareness of the brand and only come back days or weeks later through a direct visit, a branded search, or another channel entirely. So the challenge is that a lot of touch points are either practically visible or completely invisible to us. And from an attribution perspective, we're still heavily reliant on click-based measurement. So the problem is AI is creating influence that doesn't always generate an immediate click. So a user may discover your brand through an AI generated answer today, hear about you again through social tomorrow, and then convert through a branded search next week. So traditional attribution models will often credit the final touch point while ignoring the role AI played in creating awareness in the first place. So then this just causes an issue that I think one of the reasons we're seeing more organizations panic when traffic is declining is that the measuring that they can see, but they're struggling to measure the influence happening before that click was there. So the uncomfortable truth is that attribution has never been perfect. I feel like AI has just exposed some of the weaknesses that were sort of already there, in the first place.
Yeah, just like exacerbated it, and now we're like in the dark, and we're trying to come up with a way to show this measurement or the influence. Nice. Thank you very much. Oh, go right ahead, Sarah, maybe for this last one before we jump to the next section.
Yeah, I like what Rejoice said. And before AI, there was always a question, which queries are bringing us most conversions? And we couldn't do this connection, right? Now there's even more complexities. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Thank you very much for everyone, your contributions on the revenue alignment section. We're going to jump now in terms of technical debt. Whether it's unaddressed, what does it mean now in terms of AI search and visibility? How does it impact? I think a lot of us will agree, or at least from my perspective, the foundational SEO still matters 100%. If we talk about indexability, maybe we can say to a certain extent in terms of visibility in AI search or in LLMs. But let's just jump right into it to get some of your feedback in terms of what does it mean and in terms of your SEO checklist. So the first question is, has anything in your technical SEO checklist changed in the last year because of LLMs and AI search, or is it mostly the same fundamentals with a new urgency? So this first one, if we could jump to Patryk, and then we'll jump to Andreas.
Yes, in the last year, like in my own case, I don't think anything much changed because I already was focusing a lot on things that already mattered for LLMs that we didn't even know about. So a lot about crawling, indexation, rendering, of course, stuff that at least from my perspective, became underappreciated in SEO, and like a lot of businesses and websites took a lot of those things for granted because Google stated year over year that they can render pages, they can render content, and now with LLMs that go back to not being able to render JavaScript, to struggling with getting the content that is harder to get to with JavaScript, we are getting back to optimizing rendering, focusing on server-side rendering, other ways of doing that, focusing on crawling indexation to help LLMs and search engines actually find your pages, not to have millions and millions of low quality stuff or low quality pages on your website. So a lot of those areas that we as technical SEOs were focused on for years and years and years, that became a stable in the SEO industry, and a lot of businesses got those things for granted, are now even more important because of LLMs, but also for SEO and search results. Of course, they are also important, and we see time and time again that all of those things impact both usual search engines and positions, and now LLMs.
Right. So in terms of crawlability, I mean, that's probably a first step. Is your page reachable? Can it even, let's say, can it render the actual page and the content on that for it to actually even be visible in AI platforms?
Yes, that's one thing. And the other thing is the scale. So do you have 2 million pages, but only 10,000 of them are actually important? They actually bring any value, and you have 2 million, filter combinations or spam pages that you just need to remove or redirect or block or deal with them to make your site as lean as possible and as valuable as possible because of that.
Makes sense. Andreas, did you want to add anything? Also, can I ask you a quick question? Is it okay to call you Dre? I should have asked in the beginning, but is it Dre is
As
okay?
long as it's nothing rude, I'm fine. You can even call me James, whatever you want.
No worries. Dre, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, look, the basics of SEO will always be there, but I would say that there is probably more emphasis on entity optimization, which you can communicate via schema. Google has recently announced knowledge formats, open knowledge formats. So it's about providing almost like a map of your entities that you can communicate to not just Google but AI platforms. There's markdowns, which I'm experimenting with. Markdown files. We've been told LLMs.txt. So there's a lot of hygiene factors that have been introduced, I believe, to be a bit more LLM forward. That doesn't replace SEO, but it does absolutely add to the checklist from a technical perspective. From a content perspective, I believe that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, no worries at all. So we still have the same traditional, let's say, SEO bots that we were always focused on, and now we have these new bots that we have to understand what does it mean when they're visiting our pages, making sure that they can actually reach the content and understand it. So it makes sense. So maybe not too much has changed, but a new introduction of optimizing for specific agents or bots.
Yeah, so the real change is just the additional things to work with and to be mindful of. I mean, there is a certain content optimization element of, if we think of what is the nature of AI, they're really glorified auto completers, right? So that's why your content might be more optimized towards an FAQ format than it would have been before, So that's another example of that actually is not a checklist item, but that's actually a change in how content might be optimized for both LLMs and search engines.
Okay. Patryk, I think you also wanted to jump in.
No, I think Andreas got everything.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get to the next one. The next question is, what do most SEOs misunderstand about LLMs actually retrieve and use content, about how LLMs actually retrieve and use content, and where does that lead them to waste effort? Rejoice, could you let us know?
So I think for me, the biggest misunderstanding is that people assume LLMs work like a search engine with a slightly different interface. And I think that's mostly part because for years, SEO has sort of been trained to think about rankings. We know how Google crawls, we know how Google indexes, we know how Google ranks content. So when AI search sort of emerged, the natural reaction was to ask, what's the ranking factor, or how do I optimize for ChatGPT? But the reality is that the relationship between content and visibility is much less direct. LLMs aren't simply retrieving a page and displaying it in position one. What they're trying to do is understand information, synthesize it, compare sources, and generate a response that we see. So that means that they're often looking for signals that go beyond traditional SEO metrics. So one thing I have seen, people underestimate is the role of entity understanding and brand recognition. If an AI system is trying to understand or trying to answer a question about the best software solution or whatever the case may be, the most useful source isn't necessarily the page that has the exact keyword on it. It may be the company that consistently appears in trusted industry publications, the company that is referenced by third parties and has built a clear association with that topic over time. And that's why I sort of think that we're entering this world where authority is becoming increasingly distributed. So it's not just what you publish on your own website now, it is what the wider internet says about you. Another misconception that I've sort of seen is that people think that they need entirely new content strategies to AI. And I think thinking that way makes it sort of a bit backwards. So organizations creating AI specific landing page, rewriting content to sound more robotic, or trying to optimize for every single possible prompt variation in many cases, that effort could just be spent elsewhere. So when I look at the brands that are appearing consistently across AI platforms, they're usually the ones that do things that we've known matters for years. So they're publishing genuine, useful content. They're answering questions clearly. They're demonstrating expertise, and they're earning those mentions from credible sources. So what change isn't necessarily the good content, what good content looks like. What changes the importance of making that expertise easy for machines to understand and easy for AI systems to connect back to their brands. And I think we underestimate how fragmented the ecosystem has become, and that tendency to talk about AI search as if it's one thing is sort of different. It forgets to look at how different models retrieve, process, and present information differently. So I think for me, ironically, that's not different from what any good SEO has always been. We should have been doing this from the start anyways, and we just have to refine it for AI to now retrieve that information. So it's not about just being discoverable anymore. I think we need to also be understandable, trustworthy, and consistently associated with topics that we want to be associated for.
Nice. So our brand plays a really big role right now, and we're going to get to that later. So thank you very much, Rejoice. Dre, I think you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, very quickly. So the way I model my understanding of where LLMs fit into the information retrieval problem is this: you've got search engines, and they've been brilliant at extracting data from the internet, and they've done their best to rank the sources, etc. And then you've got the transformation layer, which is basically what these AI search platforms do. So they make sense of the data. So they're not really they've not really replaced search engines. They rely on search engines, and they rely on SEO best practices for that reason, because AI models are good at transforming data into something useful, generating summaries and insights, etc. And then you've got load, right? And load are the agents. They actually take what was generated from the transform layer, and they execute. They perform actions that you want them to. Or at least instruct them to. So it's a bit like a business intelligence system that has the extract ETL, as we call it, extract, transform, load, and that's how I kind of see the bigger picture of where AI search platforms like LLMs fit in. Then you got your search engines, and then you got your agents. So that to me is the bigger picture of how this all fits in.
Nice, thank you very much. I'm just going to go ahead and jump in just for the next question, just because I noticed the time and we still have another section to jump into. This is a great discussion so far. Thank you so much. This next one is, what's one technical fix or audit step that's performing higher than expected right now for AI visibility? And this question is for you, Patryk.
Yes, I think I might repeat Sara and Andreas pretty much, and Rejoice. Pretty much everybody already mentioned that. But being able to how to say that, what worked the best for me is to have a bit more technical approach to writing content, to actually be able to write content that is easy to understand for both search engines and AI. Is what moves the needle significantly in pretty much every single case, because a lot of content that is written on the internet is very complex. It's very fluffed up, because for years and years and years, copywriters and content, a lot of people focus on just the length of the content, not about the value. And if you can combine the value with keeping the content lean and easy to understand, and writing short sentences and writing clear definitions, and also introducing, of course, your experience into it, and combining all of that, that's what works surprisingly well. And I like to call it a bit more technical approach to content, but it's pretty much just a mind shift that I like to do with when I try to when I do workshops with clients or something. and it's working very, very well on pretty much every single type of the page that you can write content on.
All right, thank you. So in terms of technical debt, crawlability still matters. Maybe this much really hasn't changed. We're making sure that our content are retrievable. These new bots can understand, they can parse the actual content out there. And then we talked a lot about brand, which actually leads us to this next section. Sarah, did you want to jump in before we move?
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk a lot. Just also JavaScript is way important for LLM visibility. Like Google can handle it, give or take. Obviously, you still need to make it optimize your content for visibility for Google and make sure that your JavaScript is not getting in the way. But Google can handle JavaScript way better than LLM bots. So yeah, something just I wanted to mention.
Yeah, something else to keep in mind in terms of like making sure your content is actually retrievable or can be processed, let's say, by these other AI bots. Makes sense, 100%. So if we jump into brand, we kind of touched on this, and I think it's going to be a really good part of the discussion as well, because there's what we're putting out there for our own companies or what we put out there, but we know what other people are saying about our brand. The perception, the reviews is really influencing the responses in LLMs. And AI platforms. So it's really highlighted something that's always been important. Maybe as SEOs, we didn't necessarily play always a direct role, let's say, in terms of brand or PR. So I'm going to jump right into the first question. How are you actually monitoring what LLMs say about you, your brand, or your clients? And Rejoice, if you don't mind going ahead first.
I think, if I'm honest, I think this is one of the areas where there is still a lot of experimentation. I think everyone wants to sort of like a single dashboard that tells them exactly what ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, and every single other LLM saying about their brand. And I don't think we're quite there yet. I think what we're doing today is bringing together like multiple data points to build a picture rather than relying on one source of truth. So the first layer is AI visibility tools. So these help a lot of times, especially when we want to understand where a brand is operating in the AI generated responses, what topics are they associated with, within their competitors, are they showing up alongside it, and so forth. And these are useful because they give us a scale and trend data. So we can start to identify whether visibility is increasing, decreasing, or shifting across different topics. The second layer is traditional search data. Those are still important. So we're still looking at, and I still always look at impressions. I still always look at branded search demand, clicks, and referral traffic, because they often tell us something about what's happening upstream. So if AI visibility is increasing, I want to see whether that's translating into more brand awareness or more people actively seeking us out. And the third layer is, that broader brand monitoring. So looking at media mentions, reviews, social conversion, conversations, or third-party references, because AI models don't just learn from your website, they also learn from the wider web. So if trusted sources are consistently talking about your brand, I would want to know, because there's a good chance that's influencing how AI systems understand and represent. But I think despite all of the tooling that's available to us, there's still a very manual component. We're regularly testing for prompts ourselves, where, I sometimes ask questions that real users might ask and compare responses across the different platforms, not just looking at does the brand appear, but how is the brand being described. So again, that narrative control around that competitors that are being recommended. So I think we can't, use one particular tool. I think we still have to utilize how we traditionally look at SEO metrics, how we track those, and also understanding AI visibility, also understanding the interest around LLM searches. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I've sort of learned, trying to track and monitor AI or LLM responses, LLM frameworks and such.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even if it's a manual search, there's a lot of value that can come from actually doing those checks so that you have something to work with. Dre, how does that, do you do the same? What do you do on your side?
So I am using commercial third-party LLM tracking tools. But I think one of the things I think could be quite weak about these existing commercial tools is that they assume that the prompt happens in a single session and not part of a longer conversation. For example, you're more likely to have a thread where you might be in research mode, and then eventually after several prompts you say, okay, well, based on that, recommend me a company or business or brand for XYZ. And I don't believe the tools, I haven't seen the feature anyway, so I don't think they're doing that. I think they're just doing a kind of one shot, here's a prompt, ask it like 30 to 100 times and see, how many times you come up, so that's where my mind's at when it comes to monitoring LLMs.
Okay, so it's something we have to pay attention to if we're using, let's say, a third-party tool, and keeping that in mind.
For sure.
Sounds good. Sarah, we'll jump to you, and then we'll jump to the next question right after. Go ahead. You're just still muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm not sure on your side if it's
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. Okay. So there's a banner that popped up in front of the microphone icon. So I really like what Andreas said here about that a prompt is part of a conversation, right? And something to think of is when you're creating content, the new approach or something we should be doing right now is thinking about a task. We're not going after something specific that screenshot in time. We're looking at the entire thing. What is the user trying to achieve, right? I know this is not relevant to the main question, but I felt this is just an important point to bring up. And then the second thing, to measure visibility in LLMs, I really am a fan of DIY tools. That's just me. So I really recommend people give it a try.
Fair. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I'm just going to jump to the next question because I can see that we have a lot of questions from the viewers, and I'd really like to make sure that we have time for this. So this next one is, when you find a sentiment or accuracy problem in an LLM response, what can you actually do about it? I really like this question. Patryk, could you let us know?
Yes. I saw a couple of examples with accuracy problems, and in many of them, what we did is to understand where are we present, which sources are being taken into account with the AI answer, and try to understand if we have any misalignments between those sources, because especially in terms of user reviews, for example. So for example, we can have a business that is performing well, or we, for example, have a channel or maybe Google reviews or some merchant center reviews that are taken from Trustpilot or from somewhere else that are creating this negative sentiment about the brand. And for example, somebody forgot about Trustpilot, that they set it up a year ago, and they have a ton of negative reviews that they don't answer to because they forgot about it. And we saw similar cases. So being able to understand where you are visible in, which sources are being taken into account, and being reactive to them. So being reactive to any negative information about you and trying to correct it, and actually working on your business, truly not answering, creating creating fake reviews or anything. Actually working on your business and answering to your user demands, what they need from you, what they struggle with your business, is what will help with this accuracy problem, and actually build a better sentiment for your brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. Really addressing what are the pain points that they're sharing in those reviews, because there's a lot of information that you could actually use to, whether it's product specific, customer service specific, whatever it is related to that sentiment.
Exactly.
Great. Nice. Thank you, Patryk. Dre, I think you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what Patryk said, because prevention is often better than the cure. But what I will add is that there's a couple of dimensions. One of the ways that we do it for our clients, because this is obviously important and quite frustrating if AI is describing you incorrectly. I don't know if you're aware, but Google recently got a negative court judgment in Germany because the AI overview described the two companies incorrectly, and there was no evidence on their page, on their website content, to say the things that basically it was a major LLM hallucination in Germany, and there was a negative court judgment against Google. So I think in terms of other than relying on getting lucky with the law, the way we would help our B2B clients is to, first of all, produce some very high information gain content that would perhaps do a bit of Aikido with AI and get it to change the way it perceives your company. And the other side of it is a digital PR exercise where you, obviously, as Patryk said, you need to, prevention's, you need to cure your problems, so to speak. Prevention's better than cure. But also there's an external communications piece. You need to sort of start communicating with influencers online and perhaps change the way they perceive your company so that they'll say nicer things about you next time around, or maybe even correct what they've already said. Who knows?
Fair. So tracking what's actually being said about your brand right now, being preventative, and then also kind of collaborating with other stakeholders to build the brand perception or improvements.
For sure, but don't forget your own high information gain content that's good enough to be quoted and taken seriously by AI.
Nice, makes sense. Sarah, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the judging against Google in Germany, I think this is great news. And this is, in a way, going to support publishers, because we know that AI overviews and AI in general is by design, generates answer based on probabilities. There's always going to be some mistakes. And it's time for Google to stand behind the answers they're providing. It's extremely unfair for them to say anything they want to say, basically, and just take no accountability. So I think it's very important. This actually can impact the way I think it's beneficial for publishers, right? And it can impact the way AI overviews are generated. And they may actually have to make sure users end up on the pages to verify this information. Because, as I said, they need to face consequences to the things they have been saying, right? The answers they're providing to people. So yeah, that's the first thing. Second thing I personally noticed is I'm always monitoring, like, how is my LLMs recommending or talking about my courses. And I noticed they're sometimes pricing misinformation or not enough information overall. So I went back to the landing pages and I started adding more information and more context and stuff like that. And I've seen that improve. First of all, the probability of how often you may actually get recommended, and then also the information. So doing this small basic test where you're just checking what is any LLM saying about your brand, and what you want it to say, what is missing there, what information it should know and it doesn't, and going back and making sure you have this information very clear and accessible on the website.
Yeah, makes sense. That's pretty clear in terms of making sure that we're just addressing any unanswered questions that users or clients might have. So thank you for that, Sarah. The last question in the brand presence section is for Rejoice. How are you seeing brand and SEO teams collaborate or not on this? And where does ownership sit, or where should it sit?
I think we're really at an interesting point, because AI search is sort of exposing a problem that has existed for years, in my opinion. So SEO, brand, PR, they have often been working towards similar goals, but measuring success in complete different way. So historically, SEO owned traffic, owned rankings and the traffic measurements. Brand owned position and messaging, and PR, they owned awareness and media coverage. And I think there was an overlap, but each team largely stayed in its own lane. So now the challenge is that AI doesn't care about those organizational boundaries. So when someone asks ChatGPT or any other platform about a company or a product or even a category, the response isn't built purely from the company's website because it's influenced everywhere else. So from your content, media coverage, and so on. So that means AI visibility isn't just an SEO problem anymore. It's now, it's the outcome of everything that your organization is doing to build authority and credibility online. So what I'm seeing at the moment is a bit of a mixed picture in a way. Some organizations are still treating AI visibility as an SEO responsibility because it sits closest to search. The SEO team is being asked to explain why the brand isn't appearing in AI generated answers and then being expected to fix it. And the issue is that, many of the factors influencing those answers do sit outside of SEO's control a lot of times. So if a brand has a weak market awareness, limited third-party coverage, that will be something that maybe PR can sort of get involved in. Is not only an SEO team issue. So what we need to do now, I think, is focus on building, or organizations to focus on building that ecosystem that allows PR, brand, SEO to seamlessly work together, seamlessly have a way of looking at each other's metrics and KPIs to see how we can sort of build that bigger picture. So what I think works best is that these teams stop treating AI visibility as a channel problem and start treating it as a brand presence problem, because that would then allow all three teams or all different teams to sort of come together. SEO bring the demand data, brand brings in positioning, PR and comms, they help validate those narratives. So content teams would then help reinforce it and then thus creating that beautiful ecosystem. But I don't think SEO should own the outcome on its own. So AI visibility doesn't belong to SEO, brand, or PR. Is a result of all three, and organizations should figure out the quickest way, and that would give them the best advantage that they can have.
Nice. Thank you, Rejoice. So we really need to have a cross-departmental collaboration, and everyone has a role in this. Sarah, I think you wanted to jump in, and then after we're going to jump right to the Q&A.
Yes, I want to follow up on what Rejoice said. One thing is that if you are not spamming, if you're not doing anything wrong, you're going to work well with search. You're going to work well with LLMs. There's nothing to expose when you are doing all the right things, right? The best strategy is just being right. So yeah, that's just a tip I always say, and I think it's important as SEOs that we stick to what's ethical and what's right.
Nice. Got it. Thank you, Sarah. So let's do it. I think let's get to one of the best parts always is all the questions. So I know we're over time, so thank you so much for everyone who's with us here. Let me go ahead and pick. Let's do by upvotes by everyone who's asked here.
I'm going to go ahead and free sandwiches for overtime.
We'll have to talk during the debrief, Sarah.
Andreas is going to make us sandwiches. Please wait, everyone.
So let's jump for this first question. What are the KPIs that matter most for AI visibility that can be reported at the executive level, like clicks are used? Who would like to answer this question?
I can. I can
Please
even share a screenshot if you like. Just give me a sec.
Nope, no problem.
So, yeah, like this is just the metrics that I'm tracking are mention rate, citation rate, mean position, and mean sentiment. And by the way, this didn't come from a tool. It came from querying the API directly. It's obviously a paid subscription, but you can pay for an API. Just going back to our earlier conversation about, single point prompts tracking versus, tracking your visibility as part of a continuous conversation. What was quite interesting here is we found that the single point tracking seems to flatter the visibility of a brand compared to a conversation where you're doing it all in one thread rather than just who's the best XYZ. But anyway, that's just an observation I wanted to share. But yeah, effectively, this is it's these 4 metrics that I'm looking at. How often are you mentioned within the answer? How often are you cited as a data source? What is your average position within being mentioned or being the answer? And what is the sentiment? Like how is, because for example, if someone says, what are the worst companies to avoid for XYZ, you would not want to be the answer or have a position in that one,
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that, what you're working on in terms of, and what you're measuring, kind of to compare what we would traditionally use, let's say, for clicks. So Jalan, I hope that helped answer that question for you. Let me close this. Let's jump to this next one. It's log file analysis. And feel free, anyone, to jump in if you'd like. We didn't touch on it very much today, actually, or at all, but a log file analysis. Are you using it to add any insights based on how or what LLM bots crawl or index? This potentially is even better data than what Analytics GSC shows. Who would like to jump in?
I think it really depends what are you trying to answer by looking at log file analysis, right? Like if you're trying to see, because there are things that you may not need to search for in the log file, but if you're looking for which bots visit your website, which pages, how frequently, and so on, that's definitely a good place to look. So one of the things you may find there, for example, a Google bot, for example, accessing pages that are redundant over and over and over by mistake, some random subdomain, and costing you a lot of server costs. So you may just, hey, let's just no index those. Or so there are things that you may actually need log file analysis for. I really think it's important, specifically for AI bots as well. Like you want to know which pages are accessed more frequently and which are more important for them, and that actually helps you add the information you want them to read to those pages. So yeah, these are some of the things off the top of my mind.
Nice, thank you for that. Let's jump. I think for today, we're going to get to the first 4. Let's see. I have one question specifically for Patryk, if it's okay. I post it here for you, Patryk. It's, hello, Patryk. Are you executing chunking tests on your content? This may have been related to what you mentioned earlier.
I wouldn't call it chunking, but I tend to just answer a lot of questions in my content. I don't think it's just called chunking, but I like to have as much value in my content as possible, and a lot of value that I can extract is from questions that people actually ask. So if you can answer those questions in your content, I don't think you need to have like a separate chunk for every single question. If you can answer those questions within your content, then it should be fine.
Nice. I think, Dre, you had raised your hand.
Yeah. So one of the things I've been experimenting with is I've been testing different ways of chunking content and seeing just seeing what the results look like and how retrievable it is. I'm in the next month, I'm going to undergo an exercise where I start modeling to see, well, how does that affect the outcome? What's the root mean squared error, in terms of AI mention position, or even mentions. So I think that's going to be quite interesting. So this webinar is probably 2 months too early for me to tell you the outcome of that. What is the chunking method that appears to be working best? Is it deterministic, probabilistic? Is it based on the fixed number of words? I don't know the answer yet, but
we should have another one in 2 months to follow up.
I was going to say, we'll come back in 2 months and do a round 2.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, like I can follow up a bit on that, but because I didn't do like a proper experiment on that, but I did similar tests where we were focusing on like comparing like the brand quote unquote strength or popularity in the given topic versus the certainty in which we gave the answers in the content. And we came across like depending on how certain you are with the answer, you can appear in search results better or worse. So you can, for example, if somebody asks for a number, you can give a range of like in the answer, which gives you a higher probability of being in being cited in the answer. Or if you are like a top one in the niche, then you can give like a deterministic answer. Like I did similar tests and it's super curious, but I wasn't able to do that in a scale. So I'm curious also what you find, Andreas.
Yeah, I'll be disclosing those methods in the book that I'm under deadline to write.
Nice. So we look forward to hearing. Maybe we'll do one more question and then we'll jump to a 30-second takeaway from each of you, because you've all provided so much really good information on like what you're doing, what you're seeing. Let's do this last one and then we'll hear from you. Are there recommendations or examples that can be shared on how to frame the value? This is a good question, on how to frame the value of experimentation or feedback loop development to the executive level as a requirement for success to gain buy-in for additional resource investment. Anyone by chance would like to jump in? Yeah, Rejoice.
I think for this question, I think I would frame experimentation as risk management rather than innovation. I think right now, like the AI landscape is changing too quickly for anyone to have all the answers. So all the organizations that learn fastest will have a competitive advantage over those waiting for certainty. So executives don't need to invest in experiments for experimentation's sake. They need to invest in building a feedback loop that helps the business identify what works, what doesn't, and where those opportunities are emerging. So the goal, or the way you position it, isn't to prove every experiment succeeds. I think the goal is to reduce uncertainty and make better decisions faster. So the cost of experimentation is visible. The cost of standing still usually isn't until it's too late. So I would say put it forward as a more of a risk management than some sort of innovation. I think that will sell a lot better to like executives and such.
Nice. Thank you for that, Rejoice. So I think that is all the questions that we're going to be able to get to for today. We have a lot here. Maybe for anyone who had a question and you want to reach out to any of the panelists on LinkedIn, don't hesitate if there's something specific, because I do see some where you mentioned the names. If we could have a 30-second takeaway from each of you to share with the viewers from today's call, any take that you have, we'll go ahead with, we'll go Sara, Patryk, Rejoice, and then Dre at the end.
Okay, my 30-second takeaway is to keep an open mind, try everything, test everything over and over. It's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done thing, because things are new for everyone. Things are changing all the time. The biggest mistake I think you can do right now is just to say no to something. It's too early to have this, opinion. It's not like now in SEO, we can have a solid answer on things. No, things changed a lot, and we can't do that right now, in my opinion.
Nice, thank you. Patryk, would you like to jump in?
I would say don't forget about technical stuff. They still matter, and they still matter for like both SEO and AI search. And even if you think your site has no technical issues, like to take a second look and make sure that you have a strong technical foundation on which you can later build everything.
Nice, thank you. How about you, Rejoice?
I think my takeaway is just remember that AI hasn't broken search. I think it's changed the customer journey. That brands should focus on trust, authority, and visibility, and the brands that are winning are the ones that are creating useful content, building authority for both humans and machines to understand who they are. And the fundamentals of SEO on search, they still matter. What's is the way we measure our success that's evolving, and that's what we need to remember.
Great, thank you, Rejoice. How about you, Dre?
Well, like I say, it's just getting to entities as of yesterday. I mean, we should have been into entities for SEO, but now it's more than ever. It's incredibly important.
Sounds good. So something for all of us to keep in mind. Thank you so much to all of you for everything that you contributed today. It's really interesting to see and hear what you're working on, what you're experimenting on. It will be great. Maybe one day we will do a round two and hear some of the results of your experiments. Otherwise, thank you again for your time. Thank you everyone who dropped your questions in the comments, all your feedback during the chat. This was great. Again, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed, and you'll get a replay in a couple of days. Thank you, everybody.